Have you ever removed someone from your life so completely that even their memory becomes a stranger? I have. And if you think that's cold, wait until you hear what I did next. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. The morning Donald died, I placed his favorite mug on the kitchen counter out of habit. Dark roast, no sugar, just a whisper of cream, the same way he'd taken it for 43 years. I realized my mistake as the coffee finished brewing, steam rising like a ghost between us. I poured it anyway, watching it cool untouched while I made the necessary calls. My name is Madeline Jackson. I'm 64 years old, and after spending most of my adult life as someone's wife, someone's mother, someone's support beam, I finally understand what it means to be entirely myself. But transformation comes at a price, and mine was particularly steep. The funeral was exactly as Donald would have wanted. Dignified, understated, efficiently executed. I wore navy instead of black, a small rebellion he would have noticed and quietly disapproved of. Our friends from the university where he'd taught for 30 years filled the first few rows, their grief genuine but measured. Academic mourning has its own decorum. My stepson, Anthony, delivered a eulogy that sounded suspiciously like the introduction to his father's most recent published paper. His wife, Ariana, dabbed at dry eyes with monogrammed handkerchiefs. And then there was Haley, my Haley, adopted when she was 12, now 25, radiant even in grief, or what passed for grief on her carefully composed face. "You're holding up remarkably well," said Caroline, Donald's department chair, as she clasped my hands after the service. Her eyes searched mine for cracks in the facade. "Donald would have expected nothing less," I replied. The words practiced. Perfect. What I didn't say. I'd been rehearsing this moment for years. Not because I'd anticipated his heart giving out on a Tuesday morning while he tied his Oxfords, but because our marriage had been a performance for so long that even its end required the right delivery. The house felt cavernous that evening. The children, though neither had been children for years, insisted on staying. Mom shouldn't be alone, Haley had declared with that authoritative tone she'd perfected in law school. Anthony had nodded, always eager to follow her lead despite being 5 years her senior. I watched them from the kitchen as they settled in the living room, Anthony pouring drinks from Donald's prized Scotch collection, Haley curled in Donald's chair, her fingers tracing the worn leather armrests. They thought I was preparing dinner. In reality, I was observing the vultures circling, calculating how long propriety would require before they asked about the will. The answer was 47 minutes. "Mom?" Anthony began, his voice soft with practiced concern. "I know this is terribly premature, but there are arrangements that should be discussed." I wiped my hands on a dish towel and joined them, taking the seat farthest from both. "You mean your father's will?" Haley shot Anthony a look, half warning, half annoyance at his clumsy approach. She'd always been the strategist. "We just want to make sure you're taken care of," she said, reaching for my hand across the coffee table. Her fingers were cool and dry, and that everything is handled according to Dad's wishes. I allowed my lips to curve into what might pass for a smile. Donald was nothing if not meticulous. "Everything has been arranged." "Of course," Anthony nodded, relief evident in his slackened shoulders. "I assume Jameson is handling the estate?" Jameson had been Donald's attorney since before I met him, a friendship forged in the crucible of their undergraduate years. "Actually, no," I said, watching their expressions carefully. "Donald changed firms about 5 years ago. Said he wanted someone with more experience in estate planning." The subtle stiffening in Haley's posture was almost imperceptible, but I'd spent 13 years studying her tells. She took a measured sip of scotch. "That's surprising. Dad valued loyalty." "Yes," I agreed. "He did. What I didn't mention was that it had been my suggestion to change attorneys. I'd planted the seed casually over dinner one night, mentioning an article about estate taxation I'd happened upon. Donald, ever the academic, had taken the bait, researching firms with specialized expertise. He'd believed the final choice had been his idea entirely. "The reading is scheduled for Friday," I continued. "Gilbert Harmon will be handling it. Donald left very specific instructions." Anthony nodded, already calculating days away from his investment firm in Chicago. Haley's eyes narrowed slightly, the look she got when reorganizing puzzle pieces in her mind. "I didn't know Dad was planning changes to his will," she said carefully. I gazed at her, this beautiful, brilliant daughter I'd chosen, remembering the determined 12-year-old with tangled hair and wary eyes who'd arrived with a plastic bag containing everything she owned. I'd brush that hair every night for months before she'd trust me enough to do it herself. I'd attended every soccer game, edited every college essay, celebrated every achievement. I'd loved her with a fierceness that surprised even me. "There's quite a bit about your father you didn't know," I replied evenly. Later that night, after they'd retreated to their old bedrooms, I sat at Donald's desk, running my fingers over the polished mahogany. From the second drawer, I retrieved a small key that opened the wall safe behind his framed doctoral diploma. Inside was the real will, not the one Gilbert Harmon would read on Friday, but the original, the one Donald had intended. I unfolded it carefully, though I knew every word by heart. My name appeared throughout, naturally. 40 years of marriage had earned me that much. But what Donald never knew, what I'd ensured he would never discover, was that I'd removed myself from key provisions 5 years earlier, redirecting his considerable assets to Haley instead. A digital signature, a convenient software glitch during a review of terms, and a distracted husband who trusted his wife implicitly. That's all it had taken. Donald had signed the modified document, believing it reflected our discussions. A small fortune, the life insurance policy, the vacation property in Maine, the investment portfolio, all silently reassigned to Haley. It had been my gift to her, a foundation for the future I believed she deserved. Not that she needed it. Her law career was already meteoric, but I wanted her to have options, freedom, the security I'd never felt until I married Donald. I replaced the document and closed the safe, running a hand over the cool metal. 5 years of secrecy, 5 years of watching her flourish, secure in the knowledge that whatever happened, she would be provided for. Then came the lottery ticket, a $320 million windfall that transformed her from successful to untouchable. And then the note. 7 words that erased 13 years of motherhood. What you gave opened doors. Love wasn't included. I moved to the window, watching the moonlight cast silver shadows across the garden Donald had planted, but I had tended. In 48 hours, his official will would be read, the one that left almost everything to me, with modest provisions for Anthony, and nothing for Haley beyond a collection of first-edition books she'd once admired. Not that she needed anything from us anymore. By the time she'd left that note, she'd already purchased a penthouse in Manhattan and a consulting firm in Boston. The lottery winnings had merely accelerated plans long in formation. My reflection stared back at me from the darkened window glass. A woman neither young nor old, neither broken nor whole. A woman with nothing left to lose and everything to reclaim. "Sleep well," I whispered to the empty room, to the children sleeping under my roof one last time, to the memory of a husband who never really knew me. The real inheritance is yet to come. I closed the curtains against the night and the future it contained, already calculating my next move. The game wasn't over. It had barely begun. The reading of the will proceeded exactly as I had choreographed. Gilbert Harmon's office, with its leather-bound books and discreet ambient lighting, provided the perfect backdrop for the scene that was about to unfold. I arrived 15 minutes early, exchanging pleasantries with Gilbert, a man who knew only what I had allowed him to know. Anthony and Ariana arrived next, him in a charcoal suit that spoke of boardrooms and calculated risks, her in understated black that nonetheless managed to suggest both mourning and affluence. They nodded at me, maintaining the appropriate veneer of somber respect. "No sign of Haley?" Anthony asked, checking his watch. "I'm sure she'll be here," I replied, though I knew better. 10 minutes past the appointed hour, Gilbert cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should begin." That's when the door opened, and Haley swept in. No apology for her tardiness, no pretense of grief. She wore cream-colored linen and gold at her ears and throat, a deliberate contrast to our muted colors. Success looked good on her, I had to admit. Lottery winnings aside, she'd built something substantial on her own merits. "Sorry," she said, not sounding sorry at all. Traffic from the airport was brutal. She took the seat farthest from me, a calculated distance that spoke volumes. Our eyes met briefly, and in that moment, I saw something flicker across her face. Not regret, certainly, but perhaps curiosity. She was wondering why I'd asked her to come, given how we'd left things. The reading itself was clinical, precise. Donald's academic papers and research to the university. His personal effects and books divided according to sentimental value rather than monetary worth. And then the financial matters. The house, the investments, the retirement accounts, the life insurance. All to me, with one exception. A trust fund for Anthony. Modest by our standards, but generous by most. I watched Haley's face as Gilbert read the will, searching for some reaction. There was none. Her features remained composed, almost bored. She'd expected this, of course. She had her own fortune now. She didn't need Donald's money, or the money I had once diverted to her. When Gilbert finished, there was a moment of silence, heavy with unspoken questions. "That's it?" Anthony finally asked, his voice carefully neutral. Gilbert nodded. "Those are the terms of your father's last will and testament, executed 3 years ago." I noticed the date registered with Haley. 3 years ago, meaning 2 years after I had secretly altered the original will in her favor, and 2 years before she won the lottery and left. "If there are no questions," Gilbert began, closing the folder. "Actually," I interrupted, my voice steady, "I'd like a moment alone with my children." Gilbert nodded, discreetly excusing himself. Ariana moved to follow, but Anthony touched her arm, indicating she should stay. Interesting. That small moment of alliance. They'd always treated her as an outsider, this woman who had married into the family but never truly belonged. Rather like me. Once Gilbert was gone, I turned to face them fully. "I know this isn't what you expected," I said, directing my words at Haley. She tilted her head slightly. "I didn't expect anything, Madeline. The use of my first name, not Mom, not even Mother, was a small blade, precisely aimed. I let it pass without reaction." "No?" I smiled, thin and knowing. "Not even the beach house in Maine? Or the Steinway your father bought when you started lessons? Or perhaps the portfolio your father established in your name when you graduated law school?" Her expression didn't change, but something in her eyes shifted. Wariness, perhaps. "Those things were never mentioned in our discussions about Dad's estate," she said carefully. "No," I agreed. "They weren't. Because they were removed from the will. 5 years ago." Anthony looked between us, confusion evident on his face. "What are you talking about?" I kept my eyes on Haley. "Your sister was originally the primary beneficiary of your father's estate. I removed her name and substituted my own." The silence that followed was exquisite. Ariana's sharp intake of breath, Anthony's widened eyes, and Haley, my perfect calculating Haley, completely still, processing. "You're saying you tampered with Dad's will?" Anthony finally asked, disbelief coloring his voice. "Not tampered," I corrected. "I simply presented him with a revised version that he signed. Your father trusted me implicitly. He rarely read what he was signing if it came from me." "Why would you do that?" Haley asked, her voice betraying nothing. I smiled at her, the same smile I'd given her when she'd won her first case, when she'd closed on her first apartment, when she'd shown me the lottery ticket with 6 matching numbers. "Insurance," I replied simply. "Against what?" she pressed. "Against exactly what happened. You took the money and ran, didn't you? Left nothing but a note." I kept my voice conversational, as if discussing the weather. "You didn't know that what I gave you wasn't mine to give." Understanding dawned on her face, quickly followed by something like respect. She'd always appreciated strategy, even when it worked against her. "So now what?" she asked. "You've revealed your hand. You've admitted to fraud. What's your endgame here?" "My endgame," I said, reaching into my purse and withdrawing an envelope, "is this." I slid it across the table to her. She didn't touch it. "What is it?" Anthony demanded. "It's an offer," I explained. "The original will exists. I have it. The version that leaves everything to Haley. It could be submitted for probate instead of the one we just heard. Gilbert doesn't know about it, but Jameson does. I turned to Haley. You remember Jameson, don't you? Dad's old college friend? The one who watched you grow up? Her eyes narrowed slightly. What do you want? I want what I've always wanted, I said simply. Recognition of what I've done for this family. Acknowledgement of my place in it. Money, Anthony translated flatly. You want money? I laughed then, genuinely amused. Oh, Anthony, always so literal. No, I don't want money. I have money. What I want is much simpler. I nodded at the envelope. It's all in there. Haley finally reached for it, her manicured fingers breaking the seal with precise movements. She read in silence, her face revealing nothing. When she finished, she folded the paper carefully and returned it to the envelope. You can't be serious, she said. I've never been more serious in my life. Anthony reached for the envelope, but Haley held it away from him. Don't, she warned. What does it say? He demanded. Haley's eyes never left mine. It's not about money, she said softly. It's about control. I smiled. She always had been the quickest to understand. You have 24 hours to decide, I told her, gathering my things. After that, I proceed with the next phase. And if I refuse? She challenged. I stood, smoothing my skirt with practiced calm. You won't, I said with certainty. Because underneath all that ambition and ruthless calculation beats the heart of the 12-year-old girl who learned survival at any cost. You recognize a superior player when you see one. I left them there. Anthony's confusion, Ariana's discomfort, and Haley's cold assessment following me out. In the car, I finally allowed myself a genuine smile. Phase 1 complete. The trap was set, and Haley, brilliant, beautiful Haley, was already ensnared. She just didn't know it yet. I spent the evening in Donald's study, methodically sorting through the artifacts of his life. Academic awards gathering dust on shelves, photographs in silver frames, our wedding, Haley's law school graduation, family vacations where we all smiled with varying degrees of sincerity. I removed each photo from its frame and placed it in a box labeled Archive in my precise handwriting. The house felt emptier without Anthony and Ariana, who had retreated to their hotel after the will reading. Haley, predictably, had gone elsewhere, probably to one of her luxury hotel suites to consider my offer. I knew she wouldn't contact me until the deadline approached. It was her way of asserting whatever control she could in a situation where she had little. As midnight approached, I poured myself a small measure of Donald's scotch and settled into his leather chair. The envelope I had given Haley contained a simple proposition: return to the family fold, move back into her old room, participate in all family gatherings and traditions, present herself publicly as the devoted daughter she had once pretended to be, for 1 year. In exchange, I would submit the original will for probate, and she would receive everything Donald had intended for her. It wasn't about the money. I knew that. Haley had more than enough from her lottery winnings and her successful law practice. It was about dignity, about forcing her to confront the family she had so casually discarded, about reclaiming the narrative. My phone chimed softly at precisely 11:47 p.m. A text from Haley. We need to talk. Meet for breakfast? The Westlake, 8 a.m. I smiled at the screen. The Westlake was her territory, an upscale restaurant where she was known, where she would feel in control. I'll be there, I replied, and set the phone aside. Sleep came easily that night. There's a certain peace that comes with executing a long-planned strategy, with watching pieces move exactly as anticipated. The Westlake was busy with the morning rush of business meetings and society matrons when I arrived. Haley had secured a private corner table, already nursing what appeared to be her second espresso. She wore dove gray today, her hair pulled back in a severe chignon that emphasized her sharp cheekbones. She looked like what she was: successful, focused, untouchable. I took the seat across from her, ordering English breakfast tea when the waiter appeared. Neither of us spoke until he had departed. Your offer is manipulative and spiteful, she said without preamble. And yet you're considering it, I replied evenly. She leaned forward slightly. Why are you doing this? You know I don't need the money. Then why are you here? I countered. Her eyes flickered with annoyance. Curiosity, perhaps. Or maybe I'm trying to understand what kind of woman secretly alters her husband's will, then admits to it when there's nothing to gain. There's always something to gain, Haley. You taught me that. She sat back, studying me with new interest. Did I? You did, I confirmed. When you left that note. 7 words that erased 13 years. Very efficient. The waiter returned with my tea and took our breakfast orders. When he had gone, Haley spoke again, her voice softer. I never meant to hurt you. Yes, you did, I corrected her. You chose those words deliberately. You wanted me to know that everything I had given you, the support, the opportunities, the love, meant nothing compared to your newfound freedom. That's not— Please, I interrupted. Don't insult both of us with denials. You've always been calculating. It's what I admired most about you. She fell silent, recalibrating. I could almost see the gears turning behind those intelligent eyes, reassessing the woman across from her, the mother she thought she knew. What happens if I refuse your offer? She finally asked. I stirred my tea deliberately. Then I destroy the original will. The version Gilbert read stands. You get nothing from Donald's estate, and Anthony receives a modest trust that will supplement, but not significantly alter, his lifestyle. And what do you get out of this arrangement? Satisfaction at making me dance to your tune for a year? What I get, I said carefully, is the truth. She frowned slightly. What truth? The truth of who you really are, Haley. Behind the success and the wealth and the carefully constructed persona. I want to know who I raised, who I loved, who I lost. For a moment, something like uncertainty crossed her face. And after the year is up, what then? Then you're free. The inheritance is yours, with no strings attached. You can disappear again, if that's what you want. Our food arrived, her avocado toast and soft-boiled eggs, my steel-cut oatmeal. We ate in silence for several minutes, the background chatter of the restaurant filling the space between us. You know, she said eventually, setting down her fork, most people in your position would simply let it go. Accept the loss and move on. I met her gaze steadily. I'm not most people. No, she agreed. You're not. That's what makes this interesting. She dabbed her lips with her napkin. I'll need to see the original will first. Verify its authenticity. Of course. Jameson has a copy in his safe. We can go there directly after breakfast. She nodded, calculating again. And I'll need my own lawyer to review any agreement before I sign. I would expect nothing less. One more question, she said, leaning forward. What happens if I agree? Then break the terms partway through the year. I smiled. Then everything you've built comes crashing down. Her eyebrows rose fractionally. You can't touch my lottery winnings or my law practice. Can I? I took a sip of tea. Did you ever wonder how you won that lottery, Haley? Such astronomical odds. Life-changing luck. I watched comprehension dawn slowly on her face, followed quickly by disbelief. You're claiming you rigged the lottery? I'm not claiming anything, I replied. I'm simply asking a question. That's impossible, she said. But doubt had crept into her voice. Is it? The firm that handles the multi-state lottery security protocols was one of your first clients. You drafted their internal governance documents yourself. Her face had gone very still. How do you know that? I know everything about you, Haley. I always have. I reached for my purse, extracted several $100 bills and placed them on the table. Shall we go see Jameson now? The document was exactly as I had described, Donald's original will, dated 8 years earlier, with Haley named as primary beneficiary for most of his substantial estate. Jameson confirmed its authenticity, his roomy eyes darting between us with undisguised curiosity. I never understood why Donald changed everything, he admitted. It seemed so sudden. People change, I said simply. Priorities shift. Haley remained silent, examining the document with her lawyer's precision. When she had finished, she handed it back to Jameson without comment. Well? I prompted as we exited his office into the bright morning sunshine. She slipped her designer sunglasses into place, a shield between us. I'll need 48 hours to consider the terms. You have 24, I reminded her. 48, she repeated firmly. If you want me to take this seriously. I studied her for a moment, then nodded once. Very well, 48 hours. I'll have papers drawn up. As we parted ways on the sidewalk, she turned back. You know this won't give you what you want, don't you? You can't force someone to love you. I smiled, genuinely amused. Oh, Haley, this has nothing to do with love. She hesitated, then asked, What is it about then? Justice, I replied simply, and walked away, leaving her standing in the shadow of the office building, momentarily unbalanced. Phase 2, complete. The hook was set. 48 hours later, Haley moved back into our home. Her home, once. Now mine alone. She arrived with 2 designer suitcases and a carefully neutral expression, her BMW purring in the driveway like a contained predator. The guest room is prepared, I told her, standing in the doorway. The guest room? Her eyebrow arched slightly. Not my old room? Your old room is being renovated, I replied. It wasn't entirely a lie. I had contractors coming next week to tear out the built-in bookshelves she had once loved, to paint over the sage green walls she had chosen at 16, to erase every trace of the girl who had once lived there. She followed me inside, her heels clicking precisely on the hardwood floors. The guest room was impeccably prepared. Crisp white linens, fresh flowers, hotel-quality amenities, impersonal, perfect. The papers are signed and filed, she said, setting her bags aside. I'm officially committed to this charade for the next 12 months. Not a charade, I corrected. A reckoning. She studied me, her head tilted slightly. You've changed. Have I? The Madeline I knew was softer, more forgiving. I smiled thinly. Perhaps I was never the woman you thought I was, just as you were never the daughter I believed I had raised. Something flickered across her face. Not quite hurt, but a recognition perhaps. And what exactly do you expect from me during this year? Tea parties and mother-daughter brunches? Family game nights? For starters, I said, there's a charity gala next week, the Harrington Foundation. You'll accompany me. Her eyes narrowed slightly. The Harrington Foundation? Gregory Harrington's organization? I nodded. Gregory Harrington was one of the most influential figures in the city's legal community, and a man Haley had deliberately alienated early in her career, choosing to represent a client suing his foundation for discrimination. She had won the case spectacularly, but at the cost of burning a bridge most young attorneys would have carefully preserved. He still hates me, she said flatly. I know. I moved toward the door. Dinner is at 7. I've invited Anthony and Ariana to join us. The next few days established our rhythm, polite coexistence punctuated by carefully orchestrated moments of discomfort for Haley. I scheduled lunch with former colleagues who had known her as a child, who asked pointed questions about her sudden disappearance and equally sudden return. I arranged for us to run into the mother of her high school boyfriend, the boy whose heart she had coldly broken when a more advantageous social connection presented itself. Small cuts, precisely delivered. Haley weathered it all with outward composure, though I caught moments when her mask slipped, a tightening around her eyes, a too firm grip on her wineglass, a barely perceptible hesitation before entering a room. On the night of the Harrington Gala, she emerged from the guest room in a black column dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. Her hair was swept up, diamond studs at her ears. Elegant, understated, expensive. You look lovely, I said, and meant it. Whatever else she was, my daughter had always been beautiful. Thank you. She eyed my own midnight blue gown with professional assessment. As do you. The drive to the venue was silent. I could feel her tension building as we approached. The slight increase in her breathing, the subtle straightening of her spine. Gregory Harrington represented everything she had rejected in her pursuit of success on her own terms. Old money, established connections, traditional paths to power. Inside, the ballroom glittered with wealth and influence. I guided Haley through the crowd with a firm hand at her elbow, accepting greetings and making introductions with practiced ease. Madeline, radiant as always. Gregory Harrington himself approached, champagne in hand. His gaze shifted to Haley, recognition darkening his features. And Ms. Jackson, isn't it? What an unexpected pleasure. Mr. Harrington, Haley acknowledged, her smile professional but cool. Haley has recently moved back home, I explained. After some time away pursuing her career, she's reconnecting with family. I squeezed her arm gently, a warning, a reminder of our agreement. How commendable. His tone made clear his opinion of both her career choices and her prodigal return. I understand your practice has been quite successful, particularly your work in, what was it, class action litigation? Among other things, she replied evenly. Haley was just telling me how much she admires the Foundation's new initiative for at-risk youth, I interjected smoothly. Weren't you, dear? The look she gave me contained multitudes: anger, respect, resignation. She recognized the trap and stepped into it anyway. Yes, she managed. Particularly the mentorship program. It seems quite effective. Gregory smiled thinly. Perhaps you'd like to become involved? We're always looking for attorneys willing to provide pro bono guidance to our mentees. I watched the calculations play across her face. The professional cost of associating with a man she had once publicly opposed weighed against the terms of our agreement. I'd be happy to discuss possibilities, she finally said. Wonderful. He gestured to a distinguished older woman across the room. Martha heads our volunteer committee. She's just over there. Why don't you introduce yourself? I'll keep your mother company. As Haley moved away, Gregory turned to me with raised eyebrows. I must say, Madeline, I'm surprised. Last I heard, your brilliant daughter had cut all ties. Family is complicated, I said simply. Indeed. He sipped his champagne. Tragedy and sudden wealth often reveal true character, don't they? First Donald's passing, then her lottery win. Quite a year for your family. I smiled non-committally. Life is full of unexpected turns. Across the room, I could see Haley engaged in what appeared to be an increasingly uncomfortable conversation with Martha Harrington, whose disapproval was legendary in social circles. Another small cut. The evening continued in similar fashion. Haley introduced to people who knew her history, who had opinions about her choices, who asked questions that required careful navigation. I watched her handle each interaction with the skill of a trained attorney, revealing nothing of her inner thoughts. It was only in the car on the way home that the facade cracked. That was deliberate cruelty, she said quietly, staring out the window at the passing city lights. Yes, I agreed. She turned to look at me then. Really look at me. You're enjoying this. I am, I admitted. Why? What could possibly be worth this campaign of humiliation? I kept my eyes on the road. Did you know that when you left, Donald blamed me? He never said it directly, but I could see it in his eyes. The silent question. What kind of mother drives away her child so completely? Dad never. He did. I cut her off. For 5 years, I lived with that unspoken accusation. I attended faculty functions alone. I explained your absence at holidays. I watched him drift further away, wondering where we had gone wrong. Where I had gone wrong. That was your choice, she countered. You could have told him the truth, that I left because I wanted freedom, not because of anything you did. I laughed then, a sound with no humor in it. Freedom? Is that what you call it? You didn't want freedom, Haley. You wanted power. The power to hurt without consequences. The power to take without obligation. She fell silent, considering this. When she spoke again, her voice was measured. You're right. I did want power. The power to define myself. To build something that wasn't handed to me by you or Dad or anyone else. And the note? Was that necessary to your self-definition? Her gaze dropped to her hands, folded in her lap. No, she admitted. That was spite. Spite, I repeated. Yes, I'm familiar with the concept. We pulled into the driveway, the house dark except for the porch light I had left burning. Neither of us moved to exit the car immediately. This year, she finally said, what's the end game? You parade me around, make me uncomfortable, force me to reconcile with people I deliberately left behind. And then what? I get Dad's money and we go our separate ways? I turned off the engine, plunging us into relative silence. The end game is simple, Haley. By the time this year is over, You will understand exactly what you threw away. Not the money. I know you don't care about that. Not even the relationships. You've proven you can discard those without a backward glance. Then what? Your identity, I said simply. The person you believed yourself to be. The narrative you constructed about your life, your choices, your worth. She stared at me, genuine confusion crossing her features. I don't understand. No, I agreed, opening my car door. You don't. That's rather the point. Inside, I poured myself a nightcap and watched as she disappeared into the guest room without another word. Alone in the living room, I opened my laptop and checked my email. A message from Jameson confirmed what I already knew. The original will had been officially submitted for probate. The legal machinery was now in motion, irreversible. Another message, this one from a private investigator I had hired months earlier, contained photographs. Haley entering a nondescript building in a part of town she had no business visiting. The same building, different days, different times. I closed the laptop with a smile. Phase 3 could now begin. The demolition of Haley Jackson was right on schedule. 6 months into our arrangement, Haley had adapted with the resilience I had always admired in her. She attended the required social functions. She joined the right committees. She smiled at the right people. To the outside world, we were the picture of reconciliation. A mother and daughter healing after a period of estrangement, brought together by shared grief. What the world didn't see were the fault lines beneath the surface. The silent dinners. The careful distance she maintained. The way her eyes followed me when she thought I wasn't looking. Calculating, assessing, waiting. On a crisp October morning, I placed a manila envelope beside her breakfast plate. She eyed it warily. Her coffee cup paused halfway to her lips. "What's this?" "Open it," I suggested, taking my seat across from her. She set down her cup and reached for the envelope, her movements deliberate. Inside were photographs, the ones the private investigator had sent months earlier, plus newer ones. Haley entering a nondescript building in a rundown neighborhood. Haley sitting across from a young woman with haunted eyes and nervous hands. Haley passing an envelope to a man whose face was partly obscured. Her expression didn't change as she examined each photograph, but I saw the slight tightening of her fingers on the glossy paper. "You've been having me followed," she said finally, her voice neutral. "I've been having you investigated," I corrected. "There's a difference." She placed the photos back in the envelope with precise movements. "And what do you think you've discovered?" "I know what I've discovered," I replied. "The question is whether you'd like to explain it yourself, or if I should tell you what I know." She met my gaze steadily. "Tell me your theory." "It's not a theory." I took a sip of my tea. 3 years ago, you took on a pro bono case. A young woman named Melissa Caraway, 19 years old, pregnant, accused of stealing prescription medications from the pharmacy where she worked. Haley's face remained impassive, but I caught the slight widening of her eyes. "You got the charges reduced," I continued. "Community service instead of jail time. Very commendable. But your involvement didn't end there, did it? You maintained contact with her. You helped her find an apartment, paid her medical bills, arranged for addiction counseling. If you're suggesting there was something improper about helping a client..." "I'm not finished," I interrupted gently. "Melissa had her baby, a boy, and then she disappeared, leaving the infant with her mother, who was in no position to care for him. The grandmother considered putting the child up for adoption." Haley set down the photos carefully. "You seem very well informed about a random former client of mine." "Not random at all," I countered. "Melissa Caraway bore a striking resemblance to your biological mother. Same red hair, same green eyes, same history of substance abuse." The silence between us stretched, taut with unspoken truths. "The boy is 3 now," I continued when she didn't speak. "Living with his grandmother in an apartment you pay for. Attending a preschool you selected. Receiving regular visits from a woman who identifies herself as a family friend. A woman who looks remarkably like you in a brown wig and glasses. What exactly are you accusing me of?" Her voice was controlled, but I could hear the underlying tension. "I'm not accusing you of anything," I said. I'm simply pointing out that the woman who walked away from her adoptive family because love wasn't part of the deal has been secretly playing mother to a child who isn't hers. She stood abruptly, pushing back from the table. You have no idea what you're talking about, don't I? I remained seated, calm. The great irony, Haley, is that you've become me, taking in a child from troubled circumstances, providing opportunities, building a future. The difference is, I did it openly, while you've been hiding your, what would you call him? Your project? Your redemption? His name, she said with quiet intensity, is Daniel, and you will leave him out of this. That depends entirely on you, I replied. She stared at me, reassessing. What do you want? I want you to bring him here. Introduce him to his, what would I be? His honorary grandmother? The next event on our social calendar is the Christmas charity auction. It would be the perfect opportunity to integrate him into your public life. The color drained from her face. You can't be serious. I'm always serious, Haley. You know that. He's a child, she protested. An innocent. You would use him as a pawn in whatever game you're playing? Would I? I raised an eyebrow. Or would you be the one using him by keeping him hidden, visiting in disguise, maintaining a connection while denying him your name, your acknowledgement, your full presence in his life? She flinched as if I'd struck her. It's complicated. Yes, I agreed. Family always is. That evening, I found her in Donald's study, staring at the photographs on the wall, the careful documentation of our family history. She didn't turn when I entered, but I knew she was aware of my presence. I wanted to help her, she said finally. Melissa. When I saw her in that courtroom, all I could think was that she looked exactly like the photographs you showed me of my birth mother. I remained silent, letting her continue. I didn't plan to get involved with Daniel. I just wanted to make sure Melissa had support, resources. But then she disappeared, and her mother called me frantic. With this baby she couldn't care for. She trailed off, hands twisting together. So you stepped in? I supplied. Yes. She turned to face me. I couldn't adopt him officially. My career, my lifestyle, it wouldn't work. But I could make sure he was safe, educated, provided for, while keeping him at arm's length. Her eyes flashed. Don't you dare judge me. You have no idea what I've been through, what I've done to protect him. Protect him? I echoed. Or protect yourself from the vulnerability of loving someone who might leave you, just as your birth mother left you, just as you left me. She recoiled as if slapped. That's not... It is, I cut her off gently. You've built walls so high that even you can't see over them anymore. You visit Daniel in disguise because you're afraid, not of what the world would think, but of what it would mean to fully claim him as yours. You're wrong, she whispered, but there was no conviction in her voice. I stepped closer. Am I? Tell me, Haley, what was your plan for Daniel? To fund his education from afar? To watch his graduation from the back row? To be the mysterious benefactor who never quite becomes family? She didn't answer, her eyes fixed on a point beyond my shoulder. You left me a note, I reminded her. What you gave opened doors. Love wasn't part of the deal. Do you remember? She nodded almost imperceptibly. Would you leave Daniel a similar note someday? When he becomes inconvenient, or demands too much, or simply reminds you too much of your own wounds? Stop, she said, her voice cracking slightly. You can't have it both ways, I pressed. You can't claim detachment as a virtue when it suits you, then play at attachment when it satisfies some need in yourself. What do you want from me? She demanded, anger finally breaking through her composure. I want you to choose, I said simply. Bring Daniel into your life fully. No disguises, no compartmentalization, no safe distance, or let him go completely. Give his grandmother the means to raise him and walk away. Stop haunting the edges of his life like a ghost afraid of her own reflection. And if I refuse? If I continue as I have been? I smiled sadly. Then I'll inform his grandmother of exactly who has been visiting her grandson. I'll provide her with the resources to file for formal guardianship with stipulations that protect him from your inconsistent presence. Her eyes widened. You would cut me off from him? I would force you to be honest. With him, with his family, with yourself. the way no one forced me to be honest until it was too late. I moved toward the door, pausing with my hand on the frame. You have until Christmas to decide. Either Daniel joins us at the charity auction as your officially acknowledged responsibility, or you sign the papers I'll have prepared, surrendering any claim to his future. This is what you wanted all along, she realized, her voice hollow. This was never about Dad's will or the money or even punishing me for leaving. This was about Daniel. No, I corrected her. This was about you. About making you face the person you've become. Someone who takes without giving, who connects without committing, who uses love as a transaction rather than a gift. Just like you're doing now, she countered, using Daniel as leverage to force my hand. I considered her words. Perhaps we're more alike than either of us cares to admit. The difference is, I've stopped pretending otherwise. The night of the Christmas charity auction arrived with appropriate seasonal splendor. The venue glittered with lights and greenery, the city's elite in attendance, champagne flowing freely. I arrived alone, accepting condolences on Haley's absence with practiced grace. A personal matter? I explained to curious acquaintances. Family obligations. It wasn't entirely untrue. At that very moment, Haley was on a plane to California with Daniel and his grandmother, flying first class to their new home, a house in her name, in a neighborhood with excellent schools, with a trust established for Daniel's education and future. She had made her choice. The letter she left me was longer than the note she'd written 5 years earlier. More honest, more raw. Not an apology. Haley would never be one for apologies, but an acknowledgement of the truth I had forced her to confront. She wrote of fear, of inadequacy, of the terror of becoming her birth mother, of failing Daniel the way she believed I had failed her. She wrote of her intention to build a life with him away from the shadows of our shared past. In closing, she wrote, "You win, Mom. You've taken everything from me. My pride, my illusions, my carefully constructed defenses. But in doing so, you've given me the one thing I never believed I deserved. The chance to choose love without condition, without reservation, without escape routes. I hope it destroys me the way it destroyed you." I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my evening bag, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. Around me, the auction continued. Bids for exotic vacations, luxury items, exclusive experiences. The wealthy performing charity with checkbooks and tax deductions. To new beginnings, I murmured to myself, raising my glass in a private toast. I had taken everything from Haley as she claimed. Her pride, her secrets, her carefully constructed narrative. In return, I had given her the only thing that mattered, the truth of herself, reflected in the choices she could no longer avoid making. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't redemption, it was justice.